says we're live.
It says live.
It
We'll
says
do it
we're live. Let's go.
Woo! I did not promote that we were going to be live, and it's the middle of a work day. So I don't know if we will see if anybody joins us. If not, we will put the recording out for our friends in all the places like we do. Hi, Wisconsin Politics Group Chat.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello, Kate, and welcome back, Dr. Kristen Lyerly.
Hi.
We missed you last week.
I was listening as I was kind of like groggy, in and out of consciousness. It was delightful.
Are you running
was
better,
your care
faster,
team-
stronger now?
No, I'm on crutches.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I mean, you're upright though. I'm sure you're moving around, doing all the things, being the best patient that you could be, right?
Sure. Of course I am.
Met her. She is not a compliant patient, as many doctors are not.
I know, but
What did you do on Friday, Kristen? Just a couple of days post-op.
On post-op day 2, I went to Madison and I was at Chris Taylor's investiture, and it was fantastic and it was absolutely worth it. And I had a chauffeur who happens to be my 17-year-old son. And Kate, take note, Dan, you too. If you get 5 hours in a car with your child, it's gold. It's total gold.
That car time
forward
with the
to
kids.
that.
I mean, yeah.
Yes.
It's you have a captive audience. You can say so many things and have wonderful dialogue. Yeah, that's right.
You
Because
can.
right now, all I get is at bedtime, when the final thing, when they're finally like trying to not go to bed, that's when they actually open up and tell you everything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're like, oh,
Yes.
damn it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like being a doctor and you put your hand on, you're like, bye-bye, it's time to go. And you put your hand on the knob and then your patient is like, oh, just one more thing.
There's
I would
like a
just tell
term for
dad
that,
jokes
I
until
think.
they wanted to open up the car door and drop and roll. But
It's like different versions of the Midwest goodbye in all of these different things, right?
Well, I saw that picture of you with Justice Taylor, and I definitely thought it was an old picture. I did not realize that was real time. You are crazy. Have you seen a psychiatrist?
I've seen all the
Let's make sure you're
doctors.
getting the full round care. Okay.
It was so worth it. And I have to tell you, being there, everything that we did to get Chris Taylor elected, and I've known Chris for decades. She was the policy director at Planned Parenthood back when I was in medical school doing the advocacy work that I was doing then. So we've kind of come up together. So this to me was personal, and that's why I had to go. The feeling in that room. Governor Evers was there. Jill Karofsky was the one who inducted her. All the Supreme Court justices who were there, all of the people who were just thinking about the possibilities in November, it felt like hope, like it was thick in the air.
I love that. I went
That's
to one, I don't know if it was Judge Janet's or I think it was. And it felt so cool to be in the rotunda and watching that happen. And it's just like the procedural nature of it is really cool. And we've done some amazing things with our Supreme Court. So
Yeah.
with all the chaos, it's always really nice to be reminded of that stuff too.
And you know what they're going to do? I think maybe once this election cycle is over, they're going to take it on the road. So Justice Karofsky has this plan for the justices to go out into communities and talk to people about what their jobs are and why it matters, and to answer their questions and to make the judiciary more integrated so that people really do feel connected instead of this separation.
is that
Wow.
before or after they overrule Act 10? Which I guess is now heading their way.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Let's find out.
I love that. I was actually just thinking this morning that, I've met and interviewed a lot of politicians, and the only one justice I've really met was Judge Janet, and it was just this past spring, I think, and I was starstruck, and I honestly do not know what I would do if I met Justice Karofsky, because they are like at another level to me.
The testimony that she gave in the 1849 abortion ban case, where
Oh my
she
God.
just, if you haven't seen
Historic.
it, please look it up because she's just on fire. My hero.
Yeah, it's like that, how she went at him and that speech she gave up there is like that, and the coach from the Miracle movie. Those are like my two. If I really need, if I
Best
really
all-time
need to feel
motivational speeches. We've got that. We've got the Independence Day speech. Jill Karofsky. You know,
She's up
on
there.
through the
She's
list.
up there.
Yeah.
She is. We're so lucky. So lucky.
Oh my gosh.
Do you guys think
okay.
do you think it was because of the, everybody's losing their mind because of the primary results and all of the story that came with that? But do you think that, investiture for Chris Taylor, do you think that kind of flew under the radar as a media story
Totally.
last week too? I mean, I think it's a pretty big deal that liberals now have a 5-2 majority on the court. And I think it is, to me at least, I think it's a testament to how driven by the right that the political media environment has become in recent years, that it was just kind of a minor story, maybe even just a Madison story. I saw like next to no coverage around that here in Milwaukee. I don't know what you guys saw.
I saw zero.
Part of it is
I saw Kristen's picture.
Yeah, oh, hey, that's it.
Yeah, that was it.
But it also flies under the radar because it's so much, it's so far away from the actual election, which is in April. And they're not sworn in until August 1st. And then she waited another 2 weeks to have the investiture ceremony that, if it were, a ceremony that always had to be held every August 1st at noon, or how about moving that date up a bit, kids? I think it would be more of a deal. But at this point, you're going, when was that for? Oh, yeah, April. That's like forever ago in news cycle terms.
Well, news cycle terms are like 2 days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, we've all lived several lifetimes, I feel like, since April with all that has happened in this primary and all that has happened just all the time
I'm
in
still
the
looking-
Wisconsin political news cycle. Like, it's I got to
was
lean into it.
working-
It's discombobulating.
I was working on an article today about some of the key races, and I realized there were one or two where I still didn't look up who had actually won the primary. So, I mean, there's still people learning about the various races and who emerged from them because, there was so much attention on the governor's race and one or two others. But, I mean, I didn't realize literally until today, working on a story, that the Republican lieutenant governor nominee, Tom Tiffany's running mate, is not the person who was endorsed at the Republican Party convention. It was some other guy who is a big-time election denier. And the same goes for the Secretary of State. Big-time election denier, wants to use the Secretary of State to abolish the Wisconsin Elections Commission. The lieutenant governor candidate is, on an anti-abortion rights tear. I mean, those are two people that are not going to help Tom Tiffany on the ticket. And I didn't even know about them until today.
Where did they come from?
I don't know about where they came from, but it's interesting on how they got there. It tells you something about the primary electorate. That is usually, of course, because they're the ones that pay the most attention. So they're closer to the right fringe or to the left, as the case may be, which is why I think so many people were surprised at Francesca Hong coming up short. But certainly on the Republican side, without something that was really big and contentious, except for up in the 7th Congressional District, the people who showed up were the ones who were not as likely to go with who the Republican Party said to go with, but who they had already been exposed to as being, much closer to, their Christian nationalist point of view.
Well, I would say, too, the anti-abortion PACs and the giant infrastructure that they have is really what got this lieutenant governor candidate elected. They got their people out, and their people voted for the non-establishment person. And that is not going to fare well for them in November.
Well, and I almost I want to go back and look and see what that campaign consisted of, like which groups were helping the campaign financially, where people even heard about this campaign. Because I was looking at my village voter data, and it was so interesting. That lieutenant governor's race, they were so close. They each had like 11,400 and something. And they were both in that range. And so I'm like, God, how did people, it's such a, people don't pay as much attention to that one, but clearly the Republicans, I mean, I don't know what different circles they're in that they're hearing about things. If their establishment versus non-establishment is different than ours. I know the Turning Point is in there, and I don't know if there's like even more groups. So I'm kind of fascinated by that whole thing.
Yeah, for Will Martin, at least, who was the Republican Party of Wisconsin endorsed candidate for lieutenant governor, he was endorsed by a number of Republican legislators. He was endorsed by the Milwaukee Police Association, endorsed by Turning Point Action.
He was making
and
appearances
Oh.
with Tiffany.
it was making appearances with Tiffany. I had already seen some like Tiffany Martin signs around
We
Milwaukee County a little
They're
bit
all over
here.
Green Bay.
And,
Yeah.
and now, Will Martin only won 3 counties of the 72 counties. If you're just like looking at the map, David Varnum won just about everywhere. He was 55% to 44% overall on the map. And so, it's clearly, I know there has been some issues on the right with, their party chair and just like the establishment conversation that exists right of center as it has left of center, and we've talked about it so much as of late. But I think this is another one, and I know Dr. Lyerly here has talked about this repeatedly about the reproductive rights issue that's going to be coming up in this election because of Tiffany's record. Perhaps they saw Will Martin as somebody who could be a little bit more of a balancing, somebody from southeastern Wisconsin who could balance the geographic balance to the ticket with Tom Tiffany from the Northwoods, and also some other factors there too. But now I think, with Varnum on the ticket, and he's been endorsed by a lot of these anti-abortion groups that have, had a pretty bad track record of success in elections in Wisconsin in the past 5 years or so in particular. So I think those attacks just opens the ticket up to even more attacks. And then you had the Secretary of State candidate who has called, like Pat said, calling to get rid of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. I think the Wisconsin Examiner had a story about how he said he wouldn't sign the papers to certify the 2020 election results. There's certainly a whole lot of extremism up and down that ticket for Republicans statewide now.
We basically got our own My Pillow guy. We just, Minnesota voters took care of that, but now we've got a couple of folks like that on the Republican ticket that, again, almost nobody knows about, but I can guarantee over the next 77 days, you're going to learn about them.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Now I'm like taking some notes and feel like I need to dig more into this because it's like, where did that come from? How did that happen? It seems like that Republicans might be in a bit of disarray if Turning Point and the Republican Party finally were on the same page. And then there was another shadow segment that came up. And also how many anti-abortion groups does one state need? Isn't one enough? How many are there?
One is too many. Yeah. One is way too many.
One is too many.
And these groups want no abortion for any reason, including the life of the mother, no exceptions for rape or incest. These are very extreme groups. So if you thought abortion wasn't going to be an issue, it is not going away ever. And people are voting on it, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Kristen, we missed you last week.
Yeah.
I know there's a wealth of takes that you might have for us, having not been there for our post-election podcast last week. Let's it's like the hose, the garden hose, just let that loose and let it loose here. What are your takes here for us?
It's been a week. It feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
I know.
I mean, it was ages ago that Kate, Dan, the three of us were up all night. Pat's on the chat. It's 1:30 in the morning. We're just we're not drunk, but we look like we're drunk because we're just silly and we're trying to come up with.
Dan was a little drunk.
Dan was beer.
Miller High Life.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That's tap water in Milwaukee at Miller High Life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an amazing night. And I sure hope that we do it again in November because it was a blast to do. The results coming in, the surprise, the Milwaukee ballots going back, or the jump drive going back and forth, summoning Isaac Rowlett and his and his drone. It was just so much fun. But at the end of the day, I think everybody was surprised. The New York Times couldn't stop talking about what's wrong with the polls. First Michigan, now Wisconsin, and Francesca Hong lost. What's happening here? But I think, to me, this just tells us that we want to be able to predict. We so desperately want to know what's going to happen, but you just never do. And that's why you have to get out and you have to figure out who these candidates are and what they stand for and whether they're the right person for you. And then, most importantly, you have to get in line because we've got an incredible gubernatorial candidate right now in David Crowley. And you see Sarah Godlewski and Francesca Hong. I mean, I got a text from her yesterday and it was just beautiful. I mean, it was so Fran, like, this is what we're doing. And it was authentic, as Fran always is, and just very much a team player. So I'm excited to see how we got the excitement. And now we've got the Unity Tour and we are marching forward. But I will tell you, I was very surprised with the results in the primary and the 8th CD because we had a 3-way race. It was the first primary we've had in 2 decades. And it essentially came out almost a third, a third, a third. I mean, Rick Crossan won with 35% of the vote, but Katrina DeVille had a great showing and Mark Scheffler had a very strong showing as well. They're very incredibly different candidates. I don't know what that means about the process leading up to the primary. Media, I don't know.
It's
I
an
think it's
incumbent
interesting.
though, who's rather. I mean, as you know, Kristen, Northeast Wisconsin. He's going to have a tough road to hoe to take on Tony Weed, but you're not going to know, especially in a wave year like this, until you try. Same goes for Brian Stile. I'm writing the article about that one right now, and Democrats are hoping, 5th time is the charm, to take on Brian Stile, but you won't know till you run these races.
Absolutely.
And we have a great candidate in the 6th too. That had another really
Yes.
close primary. I feel like actually it's pretty cool that a lot of these races were really close. I think a lot of the people running in these races just worked so hard and met as many people as they could and just like connected with a lot of people and got a lot of votes, which is super cool to see this going. And I know that that's not as high profile as like the 1st or the 3rd, but I mean, Glenn Grothman is out there talking about how we're too hard on the billionaires or something like that.
We got to do more for those rich folks. That's what Glenn wants. We got to do
I
more
know.
for them, yeah.
I think and Brad Smith, his last name is Smith, right?
Yep.
He's fantastic.
Yeah. Yes, I've met him. He's wonderful. I think that's one to watch too, even if like the national people aren't going to be watching it as much. I think it's an interesting that'll be an interesting race as well.
I hate
Agree.
to be the wet blanket on that one, but what would help is if there weren't 2 independents and a Green Party candidate all in there splitting up the non-Glenn Grothman vote as well. But, again, I don't want to be telling those folks, I don't want to be considered, the establishment, or anything like that.
What are their names
saying.
and numbers? I'll call them.
Well, and one of them is a firefighter who's running as an independent. He's running with that, is it Ben Osborne group out of Nebraska that looks to put independent candidates with blue-collar jobs in some of these red districts. But again, that's all fine and good, but if you've got more than token Democratic opposition, you're just kind of splitting the vote in that instance. So, it will be tough either for either of those gentlemen or the other 2 candidates to run.
We've got the same thing happening up here in the 1st Senate District. So we don't have a Democrat running for the seat that Andre Jacques currently occupies, but we do have an independent who used to be the chair of the Brown County Republicans, but has been kind of functioning like a Democrat. So now he's running as an independent. So if you are not
My guy, Mark Becker.
Mark Becker.
Shout out to Mark.
If you are not part of the inside baseball team, though, and these races don't get any coverage. So that's the thing that's really killing me, that we talk about this, but the media is not covering any of this. They're covering like an apple orchard or like, here's another good story. Like, no, cover the actual fucking news. You are the media. People need to know. They are voting on this
Hang
stuff.
on, let me call my old TV station. I want them to hear this
Yeah,
directly from you, please.
Well, they sure as shit are covering a lot of data center stuff. We know that. No, but it is, it is interesting. These local races definitely do not get as much coverage. A lot of the stuff is happening in just these more local circles. So how do we help amplify the things that are going on in those races? And I do think the candidates who understand the media ecosystem too and how things are changing are gonna like break through more. Especially if they're kind of underdogs in their race. I think if they understand how to reach people in these modern times, they probably have a better shot than they would if they didn't, I guess.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this group chat? I think are the 4 of us all in different congressional districts too?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Yes.
So I think, we each can offer a little bit of a different perspective on both these congressional races and what's happening under the hood here, but also just like kind of how the map unfolded last week too. And I think that as I wrote my like 12 takeaways breakdown on what was going on, I think the Crowley Hong results and how those mapped out in different parts of the state, I think that is really interesting too, because I think, in Northeast, in the Fox Valley and Green Bay, as I always look to as a very swingy part of the state, that was slightly more towards Hong. Eau Claire County was one of Francesca Hong's strongest counties in the state. Here in Milwaukee County, David Crowley won, but not by a ton in the county where he currently serves as county executive. And then I think in the WOW counties, that really stood out to me as a place where David Crowley really kind of won that race ultimately, is the margin that he was able to put up in Waukesha County and the margins he also saw in a number of these suburban counties. He was at double digits ahead of Francesca Hong in Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Sheboygan counties. And perhaps not a coincidence that when I was at David Crowley's launch event at 3rd Street Market Hall in Milwaukee, about a month ago? Yeah, exactly a month ago now.
Wow.
What is time? Exactly a month ago when he launched his campaign, there were a number of elected officials from Waukesha County, from Ozaukee County, from Sheboygan County. And I think that is where, we think of these different swingy parts of the state, but Waukesha County is the 3rd most populous county in the state after Madison or after Dane County and Milwaukee County. And I think if we're just like looking at the map and the different regions that we're all in, I think Waukesha County really stood out to me as a place where David Crowley did especially well. And I'm going to be interested to see what that means for the general election too, because Tom Tiffany, unlike many of his Republican predecessors who have run in statewide races, a lot of those Republicans in the past have been from the WOW counties too. And so he doesn't have, kind of the built-in base of support that somebody else might have, like Scott Walker did, whoever it might be. How is that going to play out? And I think, I'm interested to see, to hear from you guys on how you feel this election played out in your different parts of the state here,
Well,
too.
let's stick with yours for a minute just to ask this question, because you've got some very key legislative races there. Jesse Rodriguez is not running. Bob Donovan is running, but is facing a challenge there. You've got Robin Vining running for Senate in the 5th District there. So with David Crowley now as the nominee, I guess the assumption would be that it helps the Democrats and all those, but because they are in some suburban communities as well, does that mean there's some kind of suburban pushback because David Crowley is the nominee?
Pushback. I think he is going to be a strong candidate in those parts of the state. I think, talking to some folks from Waukesha County this week when I was putting together my piece, people were not surprised that he did especially well in Waukesha County. He had, I'm pulling up the numbers here, he had 44%, Hong had 34%, Roy's with just 8% in Waukesha County there. And again, that's a difference of 5,000 votes between Crowley and Hong, and that's more than the margin that he was able to win by statewide.
I say pushback simply because, having my experience was 30 years ago working in West Bend in Washington County, where if anybody from Milwaukee said, it's red, everybody else said it's blue, or maybe more appropriately, black versus white. And, the tension there, you could cut it with a knife. We've seen all the inroads now in Waukesha and Ozaukee County. Probably not as much in Washington County from what I've seen, but obviously things are changing all the time, especially in Waukesha County.
Can I go from Waukesha to Wausau, though? I was talking with Dr. Jill Bettino, who's running for state senate up in Wausau, and her race has been elevated in the post-Crowley as our nominee era. So I think that the Democratic Party is feeling emboldened and like they can invest in more races because they've got more momentum than they had anticipated.
Yeah,
And I
going after Corey Tomczyk there up in that district, and making it a real race.
I think there are a lot of people who still don't know much about Crowley and are maybe just a bit skeptical. And I think we'll start to see I assume he is going to start campaigning in some of these swing areas that would help get the trifecta. I think people will start to see he's a very good campaigner because he's just a very pleasant, personable guy who truly just wants the best for a lot of people, and he's so great in those live environments like that. And so I'm in Donovan's district, which is interesting because it's one of those swing districts, but we're also in Milwaukee County. So David Crowley is my county executive, and so the name recognition is good here. I feel like most people know who he is. I know one of my neighbors who is a former Republican in the state legislature actually really likes him. I won't give him away on this. But David Crowley is a guy that a lot of people can get along with, especially people in government who are just like trying to get things done. Because I know Tony has said this over and over again, and people might roll their eyes, but I do think David Crowley's pretty good at just like rolling up the sleeves and getting stuff done. And so I think it's going to be interesting. I would assume that they're going to start campaigning together. And we have some interesting candidates down here in that district that are, we have Ben Brist is the assembly candidate down in the 61st. He's a veteran. He went to West Point. I saw him speak the other day. He just has a great story and like just really good things to say. And I think he'd be great to represent this district. And so it'll be fun to see him out with some of these other candidates in the different areas because everybody has a bit of a different vibe. But we're going for that trifecta, right? So,
Yep. So we've covered we've covered a little bit of Northeast Wisconsin. There was going to be what should be maybe a more competitive race here in the Chippewa Valley for state Senate, where Democrat Jeff Smith is facing former TV anchor from we worked at the same station though decades apart. Michelle Magadan Skinner is the Republican. Unfortunately for her, she has had this issue with life was a little too good. When you've got a summer house in Wisconsin and a winter house in Georgia, and when you go claiming primary residency in both for tax credit purposes, and then, as we learned last week, you have voted in both states, not at the same time, but still have flip-flop between the states voting, it doesn't go over well. And as we first record this, you've got the Democratic Party working to either get her off the ballot for not being a full-time resident of the state of Wisconsin, or as a resident of Georgia, she collected the bulk of her own nominating petition signatures. And remember what Republicans did? They passed a law that said nobody from outside of Wisconsin can collect nominating petition signatures. So a bunch of her own signatures have to be thrown out, and then she wouldn't qualify for the ballot. It's an interesting wrinkle that we did not see coming up here in the Chippewa Valley.
Let's also not forget her cameo by Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Somebody went to Cameo, the site where you can have anybody just say anything and record something, and got Marjorie Taylor Greene for a couple of $100 to say, hey, Michelle, I just want to thank you for voting in both states and paying taxes or taking tax credits in both states. And I mean, they were trying so hard to get that cameo in as part of the news coverage. And I'm not speaking for Dan, but I think several of us looked at that and like, no, that's not going to make the news story, but that video is still going to make the rounds, and it did.
It did.
I think it's hilarious that Marjorie Taylor, because like it's not just like a random celebrity from a reality show. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene fully understands the implications of that, and she still was down. So I don't know what that says about how bad she needs money or how pissed she is at the Republican Party. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And it just seems like this is the line from so many Republicans that just like everything is voter fraud. And then when we have an actual example of it, so it's like everything is voter fraud except actual voter fraud, which is fine. Yeah. I guess that's the position from the Republicans. But yeah, there was reporting that said she voted in Wisconsin in the 2020 presidential election and then went to Georgia and voted in the runoffs a couple months later.
Just a couple months later, yep.
And so
the same election cycle.
Yeah. Not this well, technically, I mean, it was November 2020, but then you'll recall there was the runoff for the Georgia U.S. Senate seats the following January. So 10 or 15 days after that 2020 election, in Wisconsin, she registered in Georgia and voted in January of 2021. And then has since voted in Wisconsin again. So, whatever works for you, but whether it's to the letter of the law or not, voters don't take kindly to it, especially upon learning as I think it was the Journal Sentinel that learned that Michelle Magadan Skinner is an elected member of the Eau Claire County Board, but has seemed to have been absent for all of the winter meetings for some reason. It's like she lives somewhere else in the winter. People don't like
Wait,
that.
her name is Maga Dance?
Yes, she was, and that's her maiden name. So we knew her for 20 years as Michelle Magadance, an anchor here in Eau Claire, and now she's married to Robert Skinner is the name. But yeah, Magadance, you could not do better as a Republican candidate. You couldn't buy that name.
I know the writers of this one thought it was too over the top, but I guess they let it through.
know.
Yep.
This is Wisconsin politics, friends.
Yeah.
That is too good. Okay, any other scandals we should be aware of? This is the best part for me.
I have a good news story that's not a scandal.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's get boring. So up in Assembly District 3, we could not find anybody to run against Ron Tussler. This is an area that is like east of Appleton, down to the east side of Lake Winnebago. It's Calumet County. It's pretty reliably red, but it's growing. The blueness is growing as Appleton expands out into this area. But nobody wanted to run against Tussler until the Friday before the primary, when Michael Goodwin stepped up and said, I have seen the relief efforts happening in Menasha, and I want to do something. Is there a way to get me on the ballot? And the answer was, yeah, you just have to get 635 people to write your name in, and you'll get on the ballot. So we initiated this giant write-in effort, not knowing whether it would work, and he came up just a little bit short, sadly. But 635 was based on the old maps, and based on the new maps, he actually came out 20 votes ahead. So we are awaiting final confirmation, but it does appear that he will get on the ballot. That to me is like drama. Yes, and now everybody's so excited about this fellow who is a volunteer, has been around. I don't know why he didn't step up before, because he clearly has the stuff, but it is like let's go Michael Goodwin in AD3.
That is crazy. Okay,
Yes.
thank you for telling that story. That also was very interesting and feel good. And yeah, keep us updated with what happens there. God, anything can happen, you guys, in the swing state of Wisconsin, including a fake poll that now everybody is wondering what went on with.
This is a
What?
weird one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So the median strategies, I believe it was called, had some fake polling that they put out in the LA mayor's race, and also put a fake poll in the Wisconsin governor's race. I think people did not really pay that much attention to this one in Wisconsin, fortunately. It didn't make like the polling averages, and it didn't really get a lot of much attention, but it was a weird one.
I didn't realize it was an option just to make stuff up and fuck with everyone. Like, I mean,
This is genius.
This is why we need to be vigilant about these polls,
We
guys.
got 77 days. Let's make up a
couple
and
things
be unabashed about it.
I would like to say about this is, first, yes, how does one member of the public assess? There's all these polls and all these tweets, and if like somebody like Journal Sentinel or UDAN or somebody writes about it, it's I pretty much like, I don't fact check the journalists. I assume you guys like have assumed it was legit, but I also, where it's gotten harder is like if I'm just looking on Twitter or whatever and you see these polls, how are people supposed to understand what's legit or not? Are there like easy fact checking ways for like regular normies like us to do?
I think like you did, you got to make sure that it's coming from a reliable source, because like there's all these different like poll aggregators, and everybody loves a poll, but there was a couple that came out over the course of this primary that I was just like, I'm not really taking this one seriously. There was like that Swing Voter Project thing. There was this Isthmus poll thing, and I was just like, let's just not give any extra oxygen to the nonsense. Like Marquette does a good poll. State Navigate, I have a relationship with those folks going back a while from my state legislature coverage at the Recombobulation area. I know those were legitimate pollsters. I know they were a little bit off, I would say, going into this in particular, with basically it looked like every undecided voter broke towards Crowley in the last week. But it is... it takes a lot to figure out, and I think it's it not just not just the polling environment, just like the overall media environment. Like you don't know who's going to be a trusted source and who won't. So it's you got to be vigilant out there. That's for sure.
Well,
Yeah,
do we know who paid for it? Who was behind it? Like, I feel like it feels almost similar to the middle class priorities, which I don't think we ever found out who was behind that either.
Uh, what was it? Because this all came because in L.A., they poked around and tried to figure out, what was going on, and since that time, it was described as a short-term social experiment examining how purported polling information could enter and spread through the political information ecosystem without independent verification. Do you know what that sounds like to me? Who is that legislator that was on the elections committee? Or you actually had the one in Racine who sent away for ballots that were not his ballots. But then, along with Janelle Branson, they're like, see, that's proof that the system is fake because we were able to obtain ballots. No, it's proof you committed fraud.
Right.
So you can't say, well, we put out a fake poll just to see how it would catch fire on social media. Yeah, you just confessed. You put out a fake poll.
Can I just be the person
But
to
why-
say there
and
was
why
there's
now?
There's a perpetual fake poll. It's called Polymarket, and I had to say it, so you're welcome.
Well, I mean,
Did you see that
is
they had
it
put out-
connected? Is it like, you know what I mean? And the thing that is weird to me is like, why did they make the announcement now? When like it was done, it was gone, and everybody like had moved on if they were ever not moved on from it. So it's just kind of like, I don't know.
I think it's just because the LA Times reported on it for like because it was the mayor's race there, and they got got a tip on some information, and the journalist ran it down. Again, I don't think that many people really paid attention to that particular poll in Wisconsin, but it's definitely a weird story. And shout out to the journalist at LA Times who uncovered this and figured the whole thing out.
But this is also why trusted voices are so important, because ultimately it comes back to who do you trust, because that's the person you're going to believe when you're making these decisions, because you just don't know. You know that the entire world is AI and somebody is sending you a flyer, but you don't know if it's good or bad. And you see things on TikTok, but you're not quite sure who it comes from or what it means. So it comes down to your people.
And now
there's a lot of people making
by the Recombobulation Area.
Yes.
Go to therecombobulationarea.com.
Well, I think there's a lot of people making a lot of bad faith arguments about a lot of different things, and it's
seriously
tough to cut through the noise.
People just love to really go at each other. Pat, how are you feeling about polls in general, both after this primary? How helpful are they for the actual public versus the campaigns and the media? And then are we already so annoyed of seeing all the polls between Tiffany and Crowley when it's like, yeah, we don't need any polls. We know it's going to be neck and neck the whole time.
I usually tried to ignore most polling, and then we had the opportunity to work with State Navigate on their polling. And what we saw, of course, was, Francesca Hung with this, crazy big lead, and watched it dwindle down to what it became. And what it became was essentially she came down a couple of points off her polling high, and, everybody broke late. And Dan kind of called this a couple of weeks back, saying what needs to happen is every undecided voter, isn't already in Francesca Hong's camp, and will they all go to one person? It turns out that they all did. So while I'm still not the world's biggest fan or defender of polling, I look at those polls from State Navigate and from Marquette and go, given the circumstances of candidates being in and out and withdrawing, and then all the late-breaking deciders, a governor getting involved as well, you actually can't look at that so much and say it was a failure. I looked at an independent analysis of the State Navigate one, and they showed where there were discrepancies in the weighting. In other words, most people who answer these polls are already, they were already Francesca Hong fans. A whole lot of people who were either older or undecided didn't answer the polling. And polling firms try to wait for that, but they missed the mark in terms of, they forgot just how many, as I like to say, little old ladies with nothing better to do than vote don't answer these polls, but they do show up on election day, and that's what happens. So I think you're still going to see the polling, and I think you have to look at the firms that are willing to put their methodology out there and say, look, we're not here to say, follow Kristen over to Poly Market Galot thing or whatever and put money down on it. But if you want a little nugget of information on where we think the electorate is right now, here it is. Take it or leave it.
Well, remember too, there are different kinds of polls. So there are very scientific polls that can do that kind of adjusting that you were talking about, but you can only adjust so much. You can only use statistics so much, but they tend to be very good at that. They also tend to be very expensive to run, very expensive to publish. So those are the polls that you only get to do if you have a ton of money. Then there are these quick and dirty polls that are good enough. A lot of campaigns just use these. These also tend to be the polls that we see coming from inside the Crowley campaign, inside the Hahn campaign. And now there are, and this is kind of a new phenomenon, these new polls coming from like dark money places that are just putting stuff out there because they know social media or somebody's going to pick it up and run with it. And it's just another piece of garbage, but it has impact.
If you want proof of, that the West Wing, as wonderful a show as it was, is now getting somewhat dated, look at a couple of the episodes, like for State of the Union addresses, where they're relying on polling. Because back in the day, when it was just landlines and everybody answered the phone when it rang, you could do polling in one night. You could get night of polling by the Harris poll or the Gallup poll, and you could know if your State of the Union speech was a hit or a miss. Now, Dan, you'd know better than I do, but I think the Marquette poll takes place over like 5 days of phone calling, 4 or 5 days of phone calling. State Navigate one was 4 different days of
and
online
other kinds of outreach.
And texting.
Yeah.
It takes that long to get people who will answer the phone and respond to something like this and be honest when they do. So polling itself is nothing like it was a generation ago.
But I think one of the things that I always find more interesting than like the top line head-to-head horse race type polling that we see in Marquette is the stuff that they really, the issue-based polls, the deep dive stuff, where the moderates are, where the more progressive voters are. And that's where we saw some of those breadcrumbs that led to David Crowley winning, because in that Marquette poll, it showed that like there was the largest group of undecided voters were those over 60 and those who are moderates and those people who like Tony Evers. And so like there were the breadcrumbs that showed the direction that the election ended up going. Obviously, all of these polls undercounted the extent to which that would matter. And I think too, I wonder, that the Crowley campaign put out this polling memo about like the shape of the electorate. And we have to remember that piece of it too, because it's like there was, what was it, 750,000 people who voted in this election. You have to remember like who that group is going to be. There are going to be very engaged people. There are going to be people who care about the Democratic primary and, not just like the 3+ million people who are going to vote in the general election. Also, I think the timing of the primary being in August was a factor too, because you look at like where a lot of these polls said a lot of Francesca Hong's support was coming from. A lot of it was younger voters. And it's harder to get younger voters to go to the polls as a more reliable group who will, as far as turnout. So, some of the people that I was talking to on election day were noting, we're not seeing spikes yet in same-day registration. We're not seeing increased turnout in, places like where a lot of younger people live on college campuses and whatnot. The early vote in some of these communities was not there to like expand the electorate, which was kind of part of the case that the Hahn campaign was making. We're going to bring in new voters. We're going to engage people who had not been part of the political process. But a lot of it does come down to that. And I think that's an important lesson to remember as we look towards the midterms, too, because a midterm electorate is different from a presidential year.
Yes.
And the way that things have been kind of realigning in our politics, a higher turnout election used to really favor the Democrats. Not so much anymore. The higher turnout election in the 2024 presidential race favored Donald Trump, favored the Republicans. And some of those lower propensity voters who only turned out to vote for Donald Trump might not be turning out in a midterm. We're not going to have the same astronomical level of turnout in this November as we had in November 2024 too. So a lot of that matters as well. And I think, I wrote about this a little bit in my piece. Everything kind of all had to line up for David Crowley. They needed those same day numbers to not be as sky high. They needed a favorable news cycle. They needed to raise a ton of money. They needed to do this, that, and the other thing. And they did all of that, and they were able to win by what was the final margin? Like 0.48% or something like that, because of course, Wisconsin, that's how we have to do things here. But I think that is an important lesson as we look ahead too.
I have a question though. You mentioned that Trump got people to turn out in 2024. How did that work down ballot? Did they just turn out for Trump, or did they turn out for all of the Republicans down ballot? Because remember, Trump's not on the ballot this November. So are they going to get out if Trump is not there?
That's a great question. And I think, for one, we obviously saw that there was some significant level of undervoting there because Tammy Baldwin won her Senate race, right? But I think there were, certain incumbent Republican state legislators because of the gerrymander, there were more Republican incumbents in the race, and incumbency matters more in those down ballot races too. So you had some Assembly Republicans who outran percentage-wise the top of the ticket because incumbency matters in some of those races too.
I mean, what are some of the other things when you were talking about the polling, like the crosstabs and more asking people about what's important to them? What are some of those things that you think are important to keep in mind as we're heading towards the general and talking about issues with people? And what did we see time and time again that really solidified in the votes we saw or the voting data we saw versus maybe like what people assume people are voting on?
Well, should we talk about data centers? Is that the opening to talk about data centers there?
Well, yes. Well, sort of. But I am asking, like, I don't know the answer. Like, what were some of, I'm guessing it's like affordability, cost of living. Like, did we have some of that data, right?
Yeah, so that was in that same Marquette poll from July as well. It had like a ranking of what the most important issues are for people, and affordability and inflation is still by far the number one issue. Okay. Immigration is very high up, but it's an issue for Republicans. It doesn't rank nearly as highly for Democrats. And I think that was part of why, the data center issue I thought was such a huge one in the primary. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same huge issue in the general election because it doesn't rate nearly as highly as affordability and some of these other issues. And I think, Francesca Hong was able to really distinguish herself from the rest of the field on that issue and get all of the people who were really passionate about data centers to go with her in the primary. I'm wondering, obviously we're seeing a whole lot of conversation about this as Republicans pivot their strategy to go against David Crowley instead of Francesca Hong. Yeah. But I do wonder how big of a deal this issue is at the end of the day in a general election versus a primary.
Well, I just got a text from one of my friends from high school who said that he already saw an ad from the Tiffany campaign about how Crowley is soft on data centers.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I talked about that on my live stream this morning, that you've got Tiffany saying that Crowley is taking all this money from the data centers. No, he's not. He's taking money from the unions who would like to build the data centers if they are done. But, never let the facts get in the way of a good story or a political ad if you're Tom Tiffany. There was also, an article about in the Wisconsin Examiner comparing Tiffany and Crowley on data centers. And while Tiffany is saying things like, he would get rid of he like Crowley would get rid of the NDAs, and he like Crowley would put on, more guardrails, and he like Crowley would, or unlike Crowley would want to get rid of the tax credit, and he like Crowley would want local control. I look at his record and I have a tough time buying any of that. And I'm not saying that, the reporter should have necessarily said that, but if you're going to do a side-by-side comparison on Tom Tiffany's record on data centers, who's rather a Johnny-come-lately to the topic, you have to look at some of the other things that he's done and said and see if you can really take him at his word the way he talks about data centers.
You're having a hard time believing that Tom Tiffany is telling the truth? Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, especially when it comes to local control and tax breaks. Yes. Yes, I do.
I mean, and if you take a look at the fact that he's voted in lockstep with Trump 100% of the time, and Trump on day one or day two of this term of his presidency signed an executive order to fast track and have a massive investment in AI and data centers. And he talks about it all the time. He just had another huge event about it where he's pushing it more and more. This is like one of Trump's top priorities. You really think that Tom Tiffany is going to protect you against the data centers? Absolutely not.
No, I mean, Tiffany also voted on a bill that would prohibit states from regulating AI developers for 10 years. So,
For 10 years.
so when I heard in the commercial him taking Crowley's campaign donations out of context, I mean, that was my red flag to go look at some of the other points that we just outlined and see that Tiffany knows he's behind in the polling right now, not by much, but that he's down and that he's got to find something. And he is hoping that data centers are it because Crowley wouldn't go along with the moratorium that Francesca Hong's supporters wanted. So Tiffany's trying to be too cute by half, trying to like get some of those Francesca Hong supporters to say, "Oh, David Crowley, he's in with data centers. You can trust me." No, you can't.
Well, and I just want to say, that kind of, I think towards the end of the primary was getting a lot more media. I think the main reason most people really loved Fran's campaign and got on board initially was her true working class roots and the fact that she was a chef and owned a restaurant and she didn't initially want to get into politics and she understands the service industry and the workers who are really struggling. And we all know, or anybody who knows Crowley and knows his background knows he has lived those same experiences. He has had to fight for everything. He was not given a silver spoon. He also has an amazing story to tell about knowing what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and worse than that, live in poverty and be facing eviction. So I hope he and his team can find a way to just pivot back to that naturally and his story of where he came from and why he has so much perspective and empathy for all the people who are struggling with the number one issue, affordability and cost of living. And I think he'll start to see Fran supporters come around when they realize that he is also one of them.
I don't know. You're going up against the dam man. He was a dam man. And, I mean, he's leaning so hard into that one job that got his hands dirty before he decided to back up all the billionaires and Donald Trump and go to Congress. I don't think it's going to work.
Well, and I think this is what makes the data centers issue an interesting one here because Francesca Hong was able to, she was for a moratorium. And just was able to distinguish herself on that issue. She had credibility on that issue. Tom Tiffany does not. He does not. You can do the he said, she said, whatever with this back and forth with Crowley. But also at the same time, it's a big issue. It's going to resonate with people. It does cut across traditional political lines. I think David Crowley is a little bit out of step with where the public is on this issue at the moment. He's going to have to do some work to win some people over on this issue. And so, I've said throughout all along that this is an important one, that this is very a critical issue. And I'm not changing my position on that at all. I just think that it becomes a different argument when you're talking across different people who have different levels of credibility on this type of issue.
If you're a Democratic legislative leader, they are emphasizing data centers in that they actually did put forward a very comprehensive bill that would put up these protections for consumers, electric ratepayers, for the environment, and that Republicans wouldn't take it up. They wanted a much more watered down version. So I think the talk overall is going to move away from a moratorium, whether Francesca Hong's supporters like it or not. And it's going to be, look, we need better rules overall, not just for the new ones, but for the existing ones. And who do you trust? Do you trust the people that have already put forward a comprehensive bill, or do you trust the people who watered down a bill and are not going to have your back when big tech comes in and wants to put unlimited funds into your campaigns?
Well, I mean, Dan said credibility. I don't know if you all watched the interviews on Sunday morning with the gubernatorial candidates, but once again, Tiffany refused to say who won the 2020 election. He just dodged when Matt Smith tried to hold him accountable.
He said it. He did say it finally.
He did finally say it. Yes.
Yep. He did, but he did it in a very not
very quickly
kind
very
of way.
Quickly. He was
like
find one. Moving on.
Corner of the mouth.
Look at that.
But then to watch
Um,
Crowley over and over again, I don't know if you pick up on this, but the way he listens, he is just like intent as an interviewer is asking a question, and then he comes out with a thoughtful, honest answer to the actual question. The difference between these two interviews is just black and white.
Oh, I don't know. That's
Oh,
that
that's not what I meant.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
You
I'm saying he giving a thoughtful answer. I mean, that's not what we train these folks to do. You never answer the question.
But he does.
well,
You always-
that's what's kind of tricky when you have people. Both Fran and David are just like truthful, honest people.
Yeah.
who, like
They're
it's
not
it's
just
trickier
giving
to
the
media train
consultant
them because they
lines?
got to be able to twist things a little bit, and they're both just like, oh, I thought I was just telling you what I thought, So
Candor.
yeah, that's
It's
a little-
amazing. It's very, very
That's a little
refreshing.
interesting.
People answering questions. I love it.
Weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, and so much about the data center stuff is dominated, but I think it's we gotta remember that what would the alternative have been too, right? Like the Republicans are playing the hand they're dealt, and if there wasn't for bad faith arguments, there would be no arguments that they would be making at all, and so they would be talking about socialism, they would be talking about Thanksgiving, they would be talking about
Transports,
any
yeah.
number of nonsense that they would go after Francesca Hong with. This is what they do. If it wasn't data centers, it would be something else. And so I think again, to go back to that point about the primary versus the general election and the credibility of it all, I pulled up this most important issue list from that Marquette poll. Number 1, inflation and the cost of living. Number 2, illegal immigration and border security. And then health insurance, and then property taxes, and then jobs in the economy, and then affordability of housing, and then data centers. So it's important to put some context around this, I think, too.
Yeah, we will see what happens. I think campaigning is just a new beast these days with like how fast stuff flies on the internet and these narratives take place, and it's like the polls versus the internet polls and what people are hearing can really sway what they're thinking about. So it'll be interesting to watch. What do you got to say, Pat? I see you.
The
itching.
next Thanksgiving tweet, type of story, the next distraction is always right around the corner. Just when we think we're going to stay focused on an issue, something's going to come up. Tom Tiffany's prom date, or David Crowley didn't help a stranded motorist change a tire, or something much more goofy than that is going to come up before this is all done.
But we can help
doubt.
with that. Every single one of us as individuals can help with that, because what we can do, everybody who's listening, who's engaged, who cares about this, can figure out who represents them and how to get involved, how to elevate those messages, how to support the people that you want to represent you. Because this democracy belongs to us. And if we get lazy, because we do get lazy, we're going to lose it. So this is the time to lock in and help out.
Just like John Ossoff says, lock in.
You know where I got that? I was about to say, and I was like, Kate knows.
We love him.
Are we
love John
handicapping
Ossoff.
28 presidential already? Is it time for that? Oh, wait.
I don't even care what he's running for. As long as the media's covering it, I'm good with it.
As long as he rolls up his sleeves, Kate is in.
I mean, you guys got to admit, it's like he talks like he's in a World War II movie on the radio or something. It's like he's been practicing. We got to give him credit.
And his wife is
Yeah,
an
it's interesting.
OBGYN doctor. Just saying.
Oh.
Yep. It's always the wife, who's behind the scenes doing all the magic. Okay, well, this was fun. I guess we will catch up again soon, although I know Dan's leaving to go on vacation for a while and just get the hell
Are
out
we
of
allowed
Dodge.
to do that before Election Day? I guess if ever there's a time, this is it. Because I know.
But see, he knows that, like, literally,
I know.
he will miss out on 9 news cycles
I know.
probably,
Yeah.
and we will still.
Got some
we'll hold
travel
the fort
before
down.
Labor Day here, but I'll be back at it for September through the home stretch.
Oh,
so
I know. They've
won't be gone for
at my
long.
place they've banned no vacation days between Labor Day and Election Day, which is the right thing to do. But it's like, okay, let's not have any news for the rest of August, okay? Because I want to take it easy till then.
I know Fran is probably resting and enjoying a bit of relief, kind of like not having to be everywhere all the time. But I would like to make a request on this for Fran to hit up the grill again at as Labor Day comes up with the Brat Fest. I think that just needs to be a tradition. I just need to see videos of Fran on the grill at Brat Fest every Memorial Day and Labor Day for the rest of my life.
Yes, please.
That'd be great.
Yes, because we need Fran's energy.
Yeah,
From
Reagan
the very
fucked us, Paul.
beginning.
That is what we need.
Yes, from the very beginning.
My
we
favorite
all knew
moment.
it.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us for this unhinged weekly episode of Wisconsin Politics Group Chat. We will talk to you sometime next week, perhaps.
Happy vacations.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.